From Faith Forward Media, this is Healthcare Musings. I'm Dr. Hashem Hasabala. Welcome, everybody, to Healthcare Musings. I'm so happy to have you with me. I'm excited about this panel. I'm so excited about this panel. This is what ICU doctors get geeked about is sepsis, and just to kind of set up the conversation. Sepsis first. As an ICU, I'm a practicing ICU physician, and I'm a physician advisor. I do appeal work. I'm in this space as well, and so what led to this episode was the fact that I had read an article about artificial intelligence. It's one of the themes of my podcast is AI in medicine. So I read an article about artificial intelligence and how insurers are going to use it more to combat what they call aggressive coding, which really got on my nerves. And then hospitals are using AI to effectively bill better, right, and get more revenue for what they deserve. They're not making things up. They're just billing at the level that they deserve, right? That's from my perspective as a practicing physician. And so if an AI tool helps me with that, why not? I don't begrudge that problem. Then I was reading one of this, I won't mention the name of the company, a health insurance CEO said, yeah, you have these people that go to I'm paraphrasing, you have these pockets where they go into the ER and then with a fever and it becomes sepsis. And I was like, okay. I really triggered me. Like, we don't make things up, right? We are told by CMS that their definition of sepsis is SIRS plus infection. SIRS is fever, and I do tons of sepsis work and sepsis denial work, and the docs are coding sepsis because a patient comes in with whether it's pyelonephritis or pneumonia or complicated UTI or gallbladder or cholangitis or whatever the case may be. The patient is febrile and they're tachycardic, and then they code sepsis because we've been told forever that SIRS plus infection is sepsis. That's what we've been told. Okay, so and when they said that got me angry, and then so I wrote a newsletter about that, and this distinguished panel, and Dr. Limjoco is also joining us. Your video is off, sir. If you'd like to come join us on video, it would be great to see you. So they chimed in about, well, no, I don't. And Dr. Hirsch disagreed, and Ms. Parker agreed with Dr. Hirsch. And so anyway, this is what led to the episode. So welcome everybody to Healthcare Musings. I'm so happy to have you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's a lot of noise in the background.
Yeah, there is, but hopefully that'll be fixed in the end. So,
okay.
So let's just go around the table and have everybody. There's no random order. Just Dr. Hirsch happens to be on my right, so we'll begin with Dr. Hirsch and introduce yourself and kind of where you are in this space, and we'll just go from my right to my left. Sure. Dr. Hirsch.
So I'm Ron Hirsch. I'm a physician with R1 RCM. I work in our physician advisory division. I am kind of called the Medicare regulatory guy for our company. I also do a lot of the education for the industry and for our clients around the country.
Welcome, Dr. Hirsch. So happy to have you with us. Dr. Limjoco, is that how you pronounce your name, sir?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Dr. Cesar Limjoco, been in the CDI space for more than 2 decades. I'm the founder and content creator of The Clinical Truth and co-founder of the CDI Masterclass.
Wonderful. Welcome. So happy to have you with us. Ms. Shirlivia Parker, please.
Yes. Shirlivia Parker. I've been in the clinical revenue cycle space for over 25 years in the healthcare coding and CDI space. So it's so nice to be with you guys. I work at HIM Pros. Individual world and working with our clients throughout the United States and doing advisory services in, what is the clinical truth when it comes to sepsis and the multitude of clinical diagnoses in the CDI space.
Wonderful. And last, of course, but certainly not least, Dr. Erin Boyd, please.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Erin Boyd. I'm one of the Associate Chief Medical Officers for Sound Advisory and hospitalist by training, been a physician advisor on-site, remote for over a decade now, and have the pleasure of being able to work with Dr. Hasabala both at Sound, and he's one of our physician advisors who does a lot of our DRG clinical validation appeals for clients across the country. So thanks for having us.
Of course. Thanks for being here. Yeah, good. So thank you. Full disclosure, I am a physician advisor with Sound, so I definitely wanted to have someone with Sound, and so to join us. So again, let me set up I'm still practicing. I practice a lot, both on site and in critical care as well. And so I definitely I'm still in the thick of it. And just let me tell you, sepsis is the number one DRG. In fact, I don't know if you can see it, I'm wearing my sepsis t-shirt here. I made it when the sepsis patrol, here we are. And I have you can't see it, but I have a picture of lactic acid on the front. And then I have on the back, it says, I'm all about that bolus with a bag of saline. So I'm wearing my sepsis t-shirt.
I've heard about the rumor of, so Hasabala, it's Hasabolus at Sound.
That is my nickname. They call me Dr. Hasabolus, 100%. That's my nickname. And so sepsis is what we see. It's the number one DRG that we see in the hospital. And Dr. Hirsch, before we're beginning, are they coded as sepsis and they come to the unit? And I said, no. The ones that come, like I said, if someone called me and said, hi, Dr. Hasabala, I'd like to admit this patient to the ICU. Oh, how come? Well, they have the flu and their temperature is 102 and they're tacking away at 110. Are they hemodynamically stable? Yeah, totally. Are they awake and alert? Oh, completely. Are they hypoxic? No. Do they have anything else going on? No. But they're septic, right? They have 2 SIRS criteria, and they have an infection. So I'd like to admit them to the intensive care unit. And after a pause, where I gather my frustration, I may politely say no, or maybe hang up the phone. That is not someone who's going to come to my ICU. Okay, the ones that come to my ICU with sepsis are the ones who are literally trying to die. They have organ failure. They have shock, renal failure. A lot of them are intubated. They're super hypoxic. They're encephalopathic. They may have thrombocytopenia. A lot don't have bilirubin. I don't know. The SOFA has bilirubin. A lot of them, though, are thrombocytopenic. A lot of them have renal failure. A lot of them are in shock. Those are the ones that's sepsis, right? That is sepsis. It's the body is trying to kill the host. Like the body is trying to kill the host because of the infection. That's sepsis, right? And so, but sepsis 2, guys, that's not what sepsis 2 is. Sepsis 2 says if you have fever or low temperature or high heart rate or low heart rate or high respiratory rate or low, whatever, and you have an infection, that's sepsis. And so the docs are coding that, and they're not. And because they're coding that, because that's what we were taught, right? And even though sepsis 3 has been out for literally 9 years now, there's CMS with the SEP bundle has not adopted sepsis 3. It's still using sepsis 2. So that's what we're coding. And so they're coding sepsis. We're being now held to account, right, for the SEP bundle. If I don't get exactly 30 cc's per kilo and a lactic and antibiotics, and it's good care. I'm not saying it's not good care. At the same time, they don't say sepsis ruled out later on. No, they carry sepsis all the way to the discharge summary, and they say either it's resolved or they just don't even say anything, and they carry it all the way to the discharge summary because that is what they're told. It's SIRS plus infection.
So,
but that's not what sepsis is.
We've got to intervene. I got to talk.
Please.
And I can see other people nodding the same thing, shaking their heads. The Medicare never defines sepsis, right? They do not tell us a definite. In fact, it's frustrating as heck that they will not define diseases. If Medicare came out with an official list of diagnostic criteria for acute kidney injury, acute respiratory failure, we'd all love it, but they don't. Their sepsis bundle, the measure, says if you have a patient, right, who presents with tachycardia and fever, with SIRS criteria, you need to throw up the red flags and say, oh my gosh, this is a patient who is at risk for developing sepsis. You need to screen them, right? You need to treat them aggressively. And the goal is to prevent them from ever developing organ dysfunction, right?
Yeah.
So you got a tachycardic febrile UTI patient and you give them fluids and you give them antibiotics and they do just fine. You've done your job. Is it unfair that we don't get paid extra because that patient was on the brink of sepsis? Maybe, right? We get paid for a simple UTI, right? But my one analogy I use is someone comes in your ED with chest pain, right? And they get an EKG and it's got some minor stuff and a little bit of troponin. And they decide to take them to the cath lab and they stent a tight lesion. We don't get to code acute MI because we saw the warning signs. We acted promptly. We prevented them from developing that disease, right? So we code unstable angina, coronary artery disease, whatever the coding thing is. And that's where the money falls where it does, right? So I think it's really, it's not right to say that CMS defines sepsis by SIRS criteria. It's CMS saying, if you got it, you better be acting to prevent sepsis. Okay.
I'd like to add one point to his, because I just did a physician education on this. And what we did, if the patient has 2 SIRS and an underlying infection, we start the sepsis bundle and we document the localized infection. And this was with the hospitalist team here where I am. And then if we get to that stage where it's organ dysfunction, then we start to introduce the diagnosis of sepsis. The physicians I work with here are really, really good, even to rule it out, because we've done a lot of education about it. Because as Dr. Hirsch said, CMS does not define sepsis for us. When we initiate those early sepsis bundles and what we document matters. And I think I just wanted to echo what he said and some of the recent education I've done about this.
If I may,
yeah, go ahead, Dr. Limjoco.
I just wanted to make it clear, CMS policies are established to provide a framework for healthcare providers, hospitals, and physicians to ensure compliance with regulatory standards and optimize care, okay? They are, whatever the policies are, whatever criteria that may come out there, they're not mandates that means that, if you have fever and tachycardia, that's sepsis, Still, it's the physician that's on the ground beside the patient at the bedside that's making a determination if this tachycardia and fever is consistent with sepsis or maybe not. Maybe it's just the flu. And historically, CMS policies always give way. If you document transparently in the record that this patient does not go into this basket, then it's not. You don't want to force an intervention based on black and white assertions that you ticked off the boxes. I mean, we as physicians are really have that onus. We have that responsibility to make sure we rule out all the other things that may actually present as fever and tachycardia. I mean, and I think what it comes down to is to the bottom line. And again, this dichotomy, this dysfunction between what we put down in the chart and what the patient really has, is becoming, the gap is getting bigger and bigger, and that's not right.
It's sad
Dr. Boyd.
It's sad that we get paid. I'm sorry, Erin. That we get paid the way our system works, right? That, some people, we save lives and you get paid a pittance. A patient's really sick and you get paid a lot of money and maybe they die. It's a weird system, and it forces sometimes the financial pressures to say, oh, someone says that, SIRS can be sepsis. And if you don't do it, some administrator comes to the department and says, hey, you doctors, you've got to start documenting sepsis better. Erin and I, our companies, every day we fight denials where doctors under-document how sick patients are or over-document because, what's acute kidney injury? What's the cutoff? Again, acute respiratory failure. And doctors are documenting that. And the nurse is noting the patient went downstairs to smoke. How do you support, the clinical thing? Sorry, Erin, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, no
Dr. Boyd, yeah.
worries. I think so. I think part of where the challenge lies for me too, and it adds to the confusion, is that coding has not caught up, meaning that you can still code for sepsis and severe sepsis, right? So the problem then is, like in my opinion, and I'd be interested in what other people think, we really just need to migrate to ICD-11 from ICD-10. She's shaking her head, but because part of what has happened is, even as a lot of the world has moved to sepsis 3, when we can still code sepsis and severe sepsis, it's not really consistent with the with maintaining just sepsis 3 standards. And it sort of supports this idea of sepsis 2, which is not always associated with organ dysfunction. The CDC uses ICD-11. ICD-11 isn't perfect either. There are issues with that. But part of the issue here, I think, is ICD-10 and the sepsis and severe sepsis that then leads to more confusion, because the coding guidelines haven't caught up with the clinical evolution towards moving towards sepsis 3. The other thing that I would mention that I think is kind of fascinating, that I see all the time with denials is, and this group probably sees this, is that third parties are coming in to audit, and they'll use a completely different definition of sepsis than what may even be agreed upon between the hospital and the contracted insurer. So there are some hospitals, for instance, that have, if we're going to talk about denials, that have said, okay, we're going to define sepsis as X, Y, or Z. The third party that comes in, whether it's some of these that we're very familiar with, Cotiviti, others, comes in and uses a totally different definition. So then it throws even more confusion into things. I had one just the other day. The insurer actually had agreed to use sepsis 2 criteria, but the third party is issuing denials post facto based on sepsis 3. So I think, so there's the kind of the clinical piece and what's sepsis and all the questions, but then there's also all these confounding factors with coding and insurance contracts and different definitions flying all over, that everyone just kind of throws their hands up and says, well, I don't know, just tell me what to do, right?
Exactly. So Dr. Hirsch, you were mentioned about the acute MI, but CMS does not have an acute MI bundle where you have to do these things, and if you fall out, you're out of compliance. And the reason the administrator, listen, I'm head of quality at my hospital. Okay, so sepsis is a big deal. It's part of our Vizient rankings. It's part of our leapfrog. It's part of everything. And so the reason administrators, especially now, are coming to the docs and say, you guys have to do it better, is because there's money now behind it. They're going to penalize hospitals that have a very, very slim, very tight profit margin, and they're going to penalize them if they don't do sepsis care good, right? And it affects their star rating. And so people think, my God, the people that go to this hospital get substandard care partly because of this thing. So there isn't the Chest Pain Society may have their own regulations, but the reason CMS is putting money behind this bundle, and no one's educated. Like it's right. No one's getting the memo. Okay, no one's getting the memo. Everyone is coding because now I'm maybe biased because I'm seeing the denial end of it. No one's getting the memo. Everyone's saying it's sepsis. And why is it sepsis? Fever and tachycardia. I can't tell you how many times I've read that.
But the CMS bundle is based on the final diagnosis of sepsis. So after the patient's been discharged, they're going to look back at septic patients and see, did you give fluids? Did you give antibiotics? Did you get cultures? Right? Coming in the door, right? What that means is we're going to have a lot of we're going to screen a ton of patients. we're going to have lots of false positives. We're going to be giving fluids to people who can't handle fluids because of this bundle.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, if they turn out to someone who develops it, if we didn't give it, we get in trouble. Is it a great measure of quality? You mentioned Leapfrog. I despise U.S. News and World Report and Leapfrog. Why? Because hospitals have to pay money to advertise their Leapfrog scores in their U.S. News scores. It costs $20,000 for your hospital to say, we did good on Leapfrog. I bet there's lots of other places they could spend that $20,000. So I'm deviating. Sorry.
No, but that's the thing.
I know.
So nobody's writing sepsis ruled out because they didn't develop organ failure. They carry it through all the way to the end.
But they should. Ms. Parker needs to teach the doctors to rule out diagnoses.
They should. I want to mention a couple of things. The physicians I work with, the hospitalist team mostly, because that's, the group who brings them in the door and who typically documents sepsis. They are 100% in tune of what we're trying to do. As Dr. Hirsch said, you have to document that sepsis to actually have it be in that sepsis bundle population, number one. I also want to mention what the comment that was said about ICD-11. I just was in Australia. They will probably go on ICD-11 before us. They are, if you read their official coding guidelines, SEP3 is in their official coding guidelines. So they have to utilize SEP3 to actually code. But the issue, I believe, in the administrative language is not having that a code for early sepsis or impending sepsis when you start a sepsis bundle versus when you truly have a septic patient. I actually partnered with Dr. Limjoco and Dr. Kennedy, and we petitioned the IC10 CM Coordination Committee to add a code for that so we can try to get a handle. There's a lot of feedback. So we can try to get a handle on where we are with our coding classification system. And we were told not enough health systems, just to kind of give you a synopsis, not enough health system is petitioning to actually change the classification system. They said the IC10 CM Coordination Committee underneath the National Healthcare Statistics of the CDC, this is a physician who's over this. He said health systems is going to be mad at him if he changes it. They are used to the broader definition. They're going to decrease their revenue. And no one, so if you really want to change, advocacy is the answer. You can get your health system together and petition for a code change. We all can, but it's a lot of feedback.
I can't.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with you. You can't begrudge hospitals for wanting revenue. It's a 24/7 business. It's the only business. The other day, I live near a hospital, and as I was driving by with my daughter, and I said, "It's open," or my son, I can't remember. It's open right now, 24 hours. It's a 24/7 business that needs 24/7 staffing, and it has to be there for the community. Has to take care because sick people don't come between 9 and 5. They don't come banker's hours. They don't come and they don't leave the ICU at the end of the day and come back the next day. No,
now
they don't.
You're getting into the site neutral debate that's happening in Washington. So that's another podcast.
No problem. We'll come back and talk about it.
Yeah.
So I don't begrudge the hospitals for wanting revenue. And if the patients are, like you're saying, if we underrepresent how sick they are, then we're getting less revenue because we're not documenting appropriately. And at the same time, now we're being second guessed at the end. We're not saying because if we say, okay, let's say this. If we say sepsis ruled out, now the DRG is going to go down, the revenue goes down. It's not inappropriate, right? But the revenue is going to go down.
So we're getting what needs to be appropriately reimbursed.
Okay.
Right?
Tell that to the hospitals that are going to close.
Look at this. We spend in this country $20 billion a year for payer denials. $20 billion that we can allocate
into patient care. But what's happening is this adversarial relationship between payers and providers. They're sticking to their guns. They're sticking to their signs. Everybody's going extreme, and we're just getting the $20 billion even up. Who's losing here? Us, all of us, because all of us are going to be patients. It's all coming out of our pockets. If the providers are going to keep on saying that, well, it's sepsis because it's tachycardia and fever, and the payers are going to say it's not sepsis because you just gave fluids and the patient got better, who loses? Who loses?
Yeah, I do. In fact, last week, plug for the podcast, last week I had Dr. Jeff Alter, not Mr. Jeff Alter, our CEO for Sound Physicians, about that exact thing, the payer-provider intractable conflict. He had great insights into how to make it work better. So please take a look at that episode from last week.
Have you heard about, I'm sure you've heard about this medical director for a payer. I forget what her name is. And she went to Congress, and then she said that, you know what, as a medical director for the insurance company, for the payer, what I'm here, my job is to use all of my knowledge, my skills in protecting the money of my insurance payer. So much so that what happened was she denied an operation to a patient who needed the operation, who ended up dying. Okay. If doctors for the insurance companies are going to fight teeth and nail, and the providers are going to fight teeth and nail because it's tachycardia and fever is SIRS, it's ridiculous. It's ludicrous.
I don't disagree. Dr. Hirsch mentioned talking about SOFA score. So for those who are not familiar, the SOFA score is the sepsis-related organ failure assessment. It's how if I remember correctly, this was 9 years ago, it's how they quantified, based on a whole bunch of statistics, how they quantified what organ failure is. And they picked, based on their statistical analysis, they picked 6 things. They picked Glasgow Coma Scale, PF ratio, bilirubin level, which is kind of weird, platelet count, creatinine, hemodynamic status, mean arterial pressure, and vasopressors. So that's, what's the 6th? I keep forgetting the 6th. It's Glasgow Coma Scale, PF ratio, platelet count, bilirubin, serum creatinine, and hemodynamics. Those are the 6 things. And the worse you are, the higher your score. And so they said if there's any change in SOFA score of 2 or more with an infection, that's sepsis. That kind of makes more sense because, and what it's good for is the sepsis, not necessarily someone coming in from home, which I assume everyone here is going to have a SOFA score of 0. I pray, right? Right? It can be helpful in someone who's already in the hospital and has a SOFA score of 9, and then develops septic shock. Those people are very hard to detect. I can't tell you how many times people that come down to the unit, they've been in the hospital and they've been brewing for days, and you can't really figure out what's happening until it's too late. I had a patient that came in with rapid atrial fibrillation. She had MDS, so she's immunocompromised. Everyone focused on the rapid atrial fibrillation. I'm not faulting any of the clinicians. They took as best care of her as possible. She had rapid AFib. They kept giving rapid AFib. In the mean, what was really happening? She was septic. When she came to me, she was in multi-organ failure. I couldn't do anything. It was too late. I couldn't get over the cascade, and she passed away. And I don't blame anyone. It shows you what sepsis really is. It looks like everything.
Yeah.
And it's that's why it's so deadly. And so I get why CMS wants to screen so widely to catch everybody that could possibly be septic.
Exactly.
The problem is people don't say sepsis ruled out.
Exactly.
And I don't know that hospitals want us to say sepsis ruled out. I don't know. I can't speak for them. Maybe I should have a hospital administrator come tell me. Maybe I'll have a quality guy tell me. Do they want me to keep ruling out sepsis? I don't know, because it's gonna give you it's gonna get rid of an MCC, a major comorbid condition, and your case mix index is gonna go down. Your reimbursement is gonna go down. That's the system that they've set up.
It's a broken system.
Yes, yes.
You're shaking your head, Ms. Parker. Dr. Boyd, what are your thoughts?
Can I just say one thing? I really think we need to advocate for a code change. All of these efforts we're putting into trying to box patients in to a clinical scenario that's not really sepsis, like you said, that broad net is important, treating patients as quickly as we possibly can to prevent that organ dysfunction to happen. We need it. I think we always get so hung up on the financial component of it. I think we can use all of that energy to advocate for a code change. Me coming from the vendor world and partnering with Dr. Limjoco and Dr. Kennedy, coming from the outside vendor world, the CDC, the National Healthcare Statistics arms of that will not listen to us. They want to hear from health systems. And no one at a health system level is advocating for that change. As much passion as they put into everything else, why don't they put that much passion into having a code change? Because any one of us can petition for a code change to actually be able to, to be able to see or to set that resources that we're using. I think we need to do that than trying to use sepsis when these patients are truly not septic. We need to.
What did you want to say about SOFA score, Dr. Hirsch?
I want to say.
No, that's a very good point, Ms. Parker.
Yes.
A code changed like what? Change the code of sepsis, or change the, what are you talking about?
Or impending sepsis, perhaps.
Oh, impending sepsis.
Impending sepsis, because impending is a term in the coding language. We have impending stroke that we can use when we're working up a patient for a stroke that technically comes out that they do not have it. But then we utilize all the resources, right, to get to that point where we were able to rule it out. So it was impending or impending sepsis. Impending is a term used in the classification language today that we can utilize when we're working our patients up and we're initiating our sepsis bundles from a quality viewpoint. And then we'll have sepsis. It's a bigger change than that because severe sepsis is actually Sub 3 in the coding classification language today. But if you advocate for that and the CDC hears from more health systems, they will be more willing to change it than just hearing from a group of 3.
And I can see, because sepsis is really a syndrome. It's not coronary artery disease. It's not pneumonia. It's not pleural effusion. It's a syndrome of organ failure because of a very complicated, and if you look up, Google the sepsis cascade, the inflammatory cascade, I think it keeps getting bigger and bigger every year as we learn more about the inflammatory cascade that causes sepsis. It's beginning with the endothelium and then just escalating. It's like literally, and then if you have like meningococcemia, the immune system drops a nuclear bomb on the entire body. And I just lost another patient with meningococcemia. It is frightening to see, right? That's sepsis, right? So I kind of like that idea of impending, because it's a syndrome that's brewing that you're trying to arrest before it gets worse, before it progresses to organ failure. I love that. The thing is, who would pick that? SCD-11? Who would do that?
Problem is we don't get rewarded for catching diseases early, for preventing cancer. We get paid for treating it. So we shouldn't do mammograms because we get paid more to treat breast cancer than we do to prevent it or catch it early. It's just crazy. The point I was going to make about SOFA, I think, is really important and part of this whole discussion. SOFA scores do not define sepsis. Right. Sepsis is the presence of organ dysfunction. End of argument, right? And insurance companies are saying you have to have a SOFA score of 2 or more to be sepsis. That's absolutely not the definition, right? It's just
quantifying the organ failure.
It's relation to mortality. If you read the SOFA 2 study, it's about higher score, higher mortality risk. So can't use SOFA to define sepsis. define organ dysfunction. They even note that they purposefully left out gastrointestinal and immunological body systems in the SOFA scoring. But so you can't have organ dysfunction there? Well, no, they just chose to leave it out. So you don't need 2 points. You don't need, any score to call it sepsis as long as there's a dysfunction of an organ.
I agree, Ron. And one of the common things we see, is an elevated troponin or new onset AFib, for instance, with sepsis. And there's clearly organ dysfunction there, but it's not counting in the SOFA score. And it's really frustrating to me. It's a very common argument that I use to combat these sepsis denials, because it's a huge gap that is not an infrequent thing that we see, right? But it's just not counted. And, from the denials that we see, it's like, well, but the score wasn't 2. The score wasn't 2. Well, but there was organ dysfunction. The point is it's organ dysfunction. And the scoring was supposed to make it easier to look at certain organs, but it doesn't include everything. And we can't just make it a black and white deal.
And by the way, the organ dysfunction has to be due to the infection.
Yeah.
Not
right.
Not by something else.
Well,
yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, but tell that to the third parties. That's even I think that that's what I argue that. I argue that what SOFA's great is, and I just mentioned this through a hospital partner of mine, is if I have a running SOFA score on somebody hospitalized, it's say 4, 4, 4. Then it goes to 5, then 7, then 9, then 11. That should be an alarm bell that something's going on. Right? That's where the SOFA score really, really comes in.
Yes.
Because I don't need a SOFA score, but I do it because I know I'm thinking of the third-party auditors. But I do it. I don't need a SOFA score to tell me someone comes in, their creatinine's 3, they're completely obtunded, they're hypotensive, and they have a big lobar pneumonia from pneumococcus. Done. That's sepsis right there. Boom. I don't need a SOFA score, right? But I'm a practicing intensivist. This is what we see. And the auditors and the payers, that's what they're doing. They're literally putting that in. And when they appeal and then they uphold the appeal, then they literally go in and say the bilirubin was this, the platelets were this, the PF ratio was this. There's no, they don't even document Glasgow coma scale, blah, 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 blah. No sepsis. You owe us $10,000. That's what they're doing.
And that's why we have, sadly, billions of dollars being spent fighting these denials, because they make up their own rules. And, I always, by the way, like to point out that there's bad things happening on both sides of the system.
Yes.
Absolutely.
There are doctors, there are hospitals that are doing crappy things.
Yes.
And so we can all see the worst
please
thing.
explain.
So there was a doctor recently that was indicted in Texas for diagnosing osteoarthritis patients with rheumatoid arthritis so that he could administer immunologics in his office to make millions of dollars off of infusions. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a doctor in Michigan many years ago who diagnosed patients with cancer. Gave them chemotherapeutics who didn't have cancer or their cancer was in remission, and there was no guideline for it.
Wow.
Dr. Hasabala, just think about this. You said, give an example. Just the fact that as an actively practicing intensivist, you're seeing patients that are not truly in sepsis, but are being called sepsis for what? For the bottom line. Is that an example right there of what you're asking for?
I don't
That's
know if
egregious.
Yeah, but I don't think we're thinking of it that we are told that's sepsis.
But again,
we're told that.
That's
We're not making it up out of our head.
Yeah.
That's small thinking. You have to go beyond that. As a physician, if I see the patient is not sepsis, why am I just going to call it sepsis for the money? Why?
The doctors aren't thinking about that. I'm telling you.
That's what it comes down to. If you're saying, well, that's what the administrator expects, fuck the administrator. Really?
Now I have to mark it as explicit.
No. Call him out. They say, I'm a physician. I'm not going to call it sepsis because the patient is not septic. If he says, well, according to CMS, this is sepsis, it's not.
You mentioned
It's not.
case mix index, right? That, administration's always tracking their case mix index. Let me give you a great example. So I have a whole talk on why key performance indicators are terrible. You guys at Sound and at R1, a lot of what we do is look at admissions or patient hospitalizations to see if it should be inpatient or observation. Many of these patients that we say, you know what, that patient's in obs, but they're staying a second midnight, we need to make them an inpatient, right? What does that patient with simple pneumonia who needs a second midnight on oxygen do to your case mix index?
Exactly. It's a competing thing. And this is totally expected, but hospital administrators will often act shocked. Well, what happened? The CMI went down. Well, we should have anticipated that might have happened.
Yeah, but we got more revenue. Yeah. We got you an obs patient turned to an inpatient. So it's really
Why does the CMI go down?
Because they're not as sick. Because they're just staying a second midnight.
It's
like all these.
Yeah.
All these patients that stay, only 2 midnights and are inpatient appropriate because they needed the 2 midnights, but they're not staying longer than that. When we're capturing more of the shorter stays, the only 2 midnight as opposed to the 4 or 5 midnight stays, right? They tend to be not as sick patients overall.
Yeah. So your overall mixed. If you want a higher case mix index, be like Rush and start doing CAR T therapy, do heart transplants, do major surgeries. That's where your CMI is, right? Hiring.
You know what the huge DRG CMI is? Trach.
Yes,
tracheostomy.
So there was another example.
Actually, so just take all your patients, man.
No, I can't do that.
Sarcastic here.
There's a hospital.
There's no way I would do that.
If we're going to call every patient with an infection as septic, just take everybody else.
You know what? Then the roof. Then CMS. Then you have to pick it. Tell us pick one. This is what's so frustrating.
I'm being sarcastic.
Something and say this is what's going to be, and we're done.
Do the right thing, and the money falls where it does.
Exactly.
There is a CEO from a Chicago hospital who paid his pulmonologists to trach patients to get them into the higher DRG. He is in prison, right? I'll send you the article if I can find it. He did terrible stuff for the sake of money, right? Luckily, a nurse at that hospital stood up and a patient was going down for a trach and said, this lady does not need a trach. She's doing just fine without it. You're doing it for the money. She called the FBI, big investigation, finally broken up.
That's unconscionable.
It is.
That's unconscionable.
Erin knows American College of Physician Advisors just published some data on the observation rates of hospitals around the country. And if you sort it by percentage, the average percentage was about 11. But there are hospitals who have 0.3 observation rates. They're making everybody an inpatient, right? They're gaming the system, hoping that nobody will audit them or they will get only a few audits, right? Why are they doing that? For the money. Observation doesn't pay enough. We deserve to get paid an admission.
More.
We're just going to make everybody an inpatient and hope for the best.
There you go.
But you know what, though? The hospitals lose money on Medicare patients.
Of course.
Every single Medicare patient, the hospital loses money. They're making up the difference on elective surgery, number one, elective surgery, and commercial.
And all that's going to be moving to surgery centers with the new rule starting in 2026.
Right. Hospitals are going to have even a harder time. And
really?
I think
Why? Why? Because it's going to be site neutral. They're going to be.
Yep. They're moving off the inpatient-only list, a lot of procedures. They're phasing it out over the next 3 years, and then they're expanding the ASC list. So a lot of the healthier patients will be going to elective places. But I think, Hesham, I feel your frustration, the frustration I think of everybody, which is that we sort of feel like, well, we need to do the right thing. And also the the balance feels imbalanced between payers and hospitals, and sometimes, and it feels like, okay, because they have more power, more political influence, whatever it is, that they're making the rules. And I get that too. But I also think that we need to sort of to what others are saying on this call, maintain our integrity and not fall to a level of um, gaming, because that's often what we're sort of criticizing others for. And we got to figure out the ways to advocate and to educate and to take care of people efficiently so that we can help the system overall and step back from the dynamic of us versus them. Because I think as much as we are tempted to get into that, and we've all been in those peer-to-peer discussions too, where you're just like, oh my gosh, thank goodness I'm not on video, I need to mute, play the circus music, whatever. I'm sure the payers feel the same thing about us sometimes, that like the more we get pulled into that, and this is sort of like a money thing and who controls the purse strings, the harder I think it's going to be to dig ourselves out of it and really do the right thing for the system, because ultimately it's the patients that end up suffering if we can't figure out how to do things efficiently and work together.
So and that's a perfect segue. We're almost out of time, so that's a perfect segue. What next? What are your suggestions for what do we do next? Ms. Parker, we can start with you.
From me, I feel like every health system in the United States should advocate for a code change. I feel like the way our current classification system is, we feel like everyone has said here, we need a box patients, like you just said, 2 SIRS plus an underlying infection is sepsis, and it is not. Where do we find that happy medium, as Dr. Boyd said, and continue to do the right thing? So I just petition everybody to advocate for a code change, and so we can get paid appropriately with these impending sepsis patient versus a true sepsis patient with organ dysfunction.
Yeah, because like Dr. Hirsch said, we're not paid for doing a good job. Like if I have somebody come in, they're literally about to die, and I give them fluids and antibiotics and quickly, and they walk out of the hospital the next day. That's why I became a doctor. And then they come back and say, well, but they weren't sick enough. What? You didn't see there. You weren't there. You didn't see how that patient looked. They were mottled, cold, obtunded, hypoxic, hypotensive. We gave them fluids. We gave them antibiotics. We got them better. And they're home for Thanksgiving, and they weren't sick enough? What? It's so frustrating, So what else? Okay, so I love it. I love impending sepsis. I love that. Let's see how we can advocate. What else? Where do we go from here, Dr. Hirsch?
I am not smart enough to figure out how we fix our healthcare system. I have been a member of Physicians for Nationalized Healthcare for many years because I think there's enough money in this system to provide healthcare for every person who lives in the United States, quality healthcare. But how you structure it, I just don't know. But there has to be a better way than our current crazy system that's changing every day. And going to get, again, without getting political, all the potential changes from the one big beautiful bill. Think about the hospitals and the uninsured. Then it's just scary. There's got to be a better way to do the whole thing.
And you know what? Again, because we are practice partners with hospitals, I understand the hospital business. The hospitals are, maybe some are making tons and hand over fist. Most don't. Most are nonprofit. Most are barely making it. They have a tiny margin. It's a 24/7 business. And you know what? When in the pandemic, when the people needed the hospitals, they were there. Okay, I was there. My entire ICU was full of vented COVID patients. Every bed had a COVID patient. Then I had the non-vented section with other COVID. I had 8 members of one family in my unit at one time. 8 members at one time. And then we had the clean ICU in another part of the hospital. And we were there, and we were shedding tears, literal tears, watching people, person after person after person die. The hospitals were there for the community. And so I get it. The hospital has to be financially viable. And the business is really tough. Like our CEO, Jeff Alter, he said the last thing he would want to be would be a hospital CEO. And I was like, oh my God, I was shocked when I heard him say that. It's a tough business, and they're employers for the community. It's so if we just whatever and the hospitals go out of business, everyone loses. Everyone loses. Dr. Limjoco.
The slim financial margins have always been the rallying cry to make patients sepsis, to make every patient that walks through the door with an infection has sepsis because they have fever and tachycardia. What we measure is what we get. When the first sepsis criteria came out in 1991, before that, we had like 250,000 cases of sepsis a year. When that came up, it shot up to almost 1 million cases a year. Okay. Have we been that stupid? I mean, I would understand if we missed every other case, maybe 50%, but making it fourfold increase from 250,000 to about 900 and some thousand cases a year. What? I mean, really? Where did we pull it out of the bag, the magic hat? Okay. Dr. Zev Neuwirth, he authored the book about Beyond the Walls. And he's saying that we need to change our system from one that is really not patient care, it's really sick care. Okay? Because that's what we reward. The sickest of the sick is how you get the most money. Okay? We need to change it from a sick care to real well care, patient care. And you say, we don't get paid for well care. Well, the system needs to be changed because we are going to pay more in the long run for taking care of the very sick patients. If we keep them from getting to the hospitals need to find a way to become more feasible as a business, okay? And we all need to be thinking about that because we're having getting the patients well enough and having longevity and, they won't be going to the hospitals. What will the hospitals be doing? There has to be a little change of thinking here. The financial margins should not be used as a reason to make every patient with fever and tachycardia a sepsis. Period.
Yeah. Dr. Hirsch said in the chat more goji berries for all. Dr. Boyd, what are your thoughts? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean,
you'll be the final word.
Oh boy, that's a lot of pressure here, Dr. Hasabala. I don't know what I think about that. We may have to rejigger your assignments that I give you later. No, I'm I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah, I would agree with everything that's been said. And I mean, ultimately, I think that these pressures to do things for financial reasons because we get paid more for sicker people it's only going to change when we have more integrated systems, right? And people who like accountable care across the whole spectrum, right? And we continue to work in our communities for integrated outpatient and inpatient care so that we can really all together think about, okay, like we don't need to, we need to take care of the patient where it makes the most sense, and we don't have financial incentives, for people to be sicker, right? And we've been struggling with this as a society, but we need more integrated, more accountable care organizations, more instead of having the friction that we have with payers, more kind of payer provider integration, right? So we can sit and have these discussions of like, hey, ultimately there are people on both sides that really care about patients and want to do the right thing. And we all have our role. And I understand why the friction develops, but if we can develop systems so that we can all win, and mostly the patient wins too, right? Because being cared for in the right setting. I think that's ultimately like the larger issue that's affecting a lot of these things that we're doing in the moment because we're siloed, right? And we're not integrated.
Right. No, exactly. That's exactly what Jeff Alter said. We at Sound know how to do it right, and I'm going to have the ACO people come and talk to us about how you can do that integrated, that carrying the patient over the whole spectrum. I think sicker patients need more resources, so I kind of get
Yes.
where I see them. I mean, if somebody comes in like truly septic shock, they're intubated, they're on vasopressors, I have to put a central line, an arterial line, sometimes dialysis catheter. They're in the hospital for several days. They take more resources, so
Yes.
it
We need to
makes
get
sense
paid more.
to compensate for that care. You need more highly specialized nurses. You need intensivists. You need specialists who are there to take care of the patient. So I would want that for my loved one. I mean, my eldest daughter passed away from septic shock, right? And this was 16 years ago, and she had an intensivist right at the bedside. I will never forget. I mean, she never left, and the other one before her. So sick care needs to be compensated because it's more resource intensive. And I also understand where the financial incentive is can be can just make it all worse. So we'll see where we go from here. I love this discussion. It was a fantastic. I learned a lot. I'm so happy you all came, Ms. Shirlivia Parker, Dr. Erin Boyd, Dr. Cesar Limjoco, Dr. Ron Hirsch. So appreciate you all. It was great to have you on the show, and this is going to be one of the great ones. Have a wonderful. We're recording this before Thanksgiving. This will air after Thanksgiving. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving with you and your families. Enjoy this this time of, and I'm truly grateful. Thanksgiving. I am so grateful to be in the healthcare field. This has been my dream. I am really living my dream. I really am. I'm so happy, and so. I'm grateful to all of you for your expertise and all that you do for our field. And so thank you for being on the show, and have a wonderful week and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. This is really fun. Appreciate you all.
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening. Sign up at healthcaremusings.com to get every episode delivered directly to your email. And please don't forget to leave a 5-star review. Thank you so much.